Mattress stitch is one of those techniques that really makes you go wow when you do it for the first time. And here I've used it to sew up a sleeve that I've knitted back and forth, and today I'm going to show you how to use mattress stitch in both stockinette stitch and in seed stitch. Mattress stitch is worked from the right side, and the first step is that you have to connect the edges on where you're starting to each other. You can either use a new piece of yarn, and that's what I'm doing, or you can also use the yarn that is left over from your cast on, but my end is too short, so I have prepared a new one. You connect the ends by kind of creating an 8 shape, and you do so by inserting the needle on your one piece between the second to last and the last stitch from behind. And then you do the same on the other side. So you insert your needle between your second stitch and your edge stitch from the behind. And then you do it again on the first part exactly where you started. So you are going to do this 3 times, and by that you are creating the 8. If you were to use the end that you have left from your cast on, then it's already attached to the fabric and you only need to do it 2 times. And then you can pull it tight. Then when you want to continue with the next step, you need to know that mattress stitch is worked between your last stitch and your edge stitch, or between your edge stitch and the first stitch. And what you are doing is that you use the floats or the bars between those 2 stitches. If you want to know a little bit more about the anatomy of knit fabric, you can also have a watch at my tutorial for duplicate stitch, where I talk a little bit more about it. But there I'm basically saying about when you're looking on stockinette stitch from the back, then you see frownies and smileys. And the smileys on the back are the floats that connect every single stitch to each other. And here they connect the edge stitch and the second stitch to each other. And these bars are the one that we are working with. Now I'm just going to hop over this seed stitch part, and we will start with the stockinette, and then I will tell you how to do the seed stitch. A requirement for finding the floats between the edge stitch and the second to last, or the second stitch here, is that you have worked every edge stitch. So sometimes in a pattern it would say that you are supposed to knit the last stitch and then slip the first one, but if you want to sew 2 pieces together, then you always would have to knit both the first and the last stitch in every row. So now I've come here to the stockinette part stitch, and what I'm doing is usually you would start down here, but if you have your yarn attached to one side, so here it's attached to my right side, I want to find the next float between the stitch and the edge stitch, and then I'm going to insert my needle under it. Then I go back to the other side and find the next float here and insert my needle under and pull the yarn through. And I'm basically just going back and forth between both sides, insert my yarn and pull it through. And here I'm going back to the next side as well. When you have worked a few stitches, then you want to pull the yarn tight. So here you can see I have the yarn in between, and the last step is when you pull your yarn tight, then this second to last and the second stitch will end up next to each other. Now I've come to the seat stitch part, and actually you do it in exactly the same way. The only thing that you have to be careful about, or what would be the idea thing, is that you have a knit stitch lining up next to a purl stitch, and as you can see here, if I'm going to sew them together row by row as it's supposed to be, then I'm going to end up with a knit stitch next to a knit stitch. What I've done to line it up is that I have jumped a few rows and taken 2 floats instead of only 1. But if you are aligned, then you just do it in the usual way. You insert your needle under the float. Here I have an increase as well. And then you pull the yarn through. And my best advice for lining up the seat stitch would be to work a few stitches and then see what it looks like. And I recommend that if the pattern is not lining up, then it is actually better to rip it out and try to glue it again, because when it works, it really looks so much neater and nicer. And as you can see, by taking 2 floats at the same time, I could change the rows so that a purl stitch is ending up next to a knit stitch and that the structural pattern wouldn't be destroyed. If you like this tutorial, as I said, I also recommend you check out my tutorial on duplicate stitch, because I think it's another awesome technique that will really help you to improve your knitting and understand how knit fabric is created. If you're curious and want to know more about this sweater that I'm working on, then I have a vlog coming up where I show you the whole process of sewing up this garment. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe so that you don't miss any of those videos. Leave me a like and I will see you next time. Thank you. Bye bye.